2, and 1. All right, welcome in everybody. We are back with Joe, and he's got a new question. So thanks, Joe, for asking questions. And you are all welcome to join us on the Vidyuu Discord and ask questions as well. Link will be in the description. Today, we are looking at building a health bar, and this health bar will be inside of a heads-up display. So I've started by sketching out a couple scripts here. And so one of these is the PLID assigner. This is what's going to assign the player ID. You've probably seen in some of our old tutorials, we'll create a number variable called my PLID is, my player ID is, etc. And I'm gonna probably go all caps. I don't know, I don't like this. Anyway, we'll just call it, oh, I like, you know what I've been using recently? I am 4, I like that one. I am 4, and then click create. And so this is what player are we for? And we know that when players enter our world, they have an index between 0 and the maximum number of players in your world. Now, if you have a very popular world, there is a bug that can occur. So if you aren't expecting it to be like, you know, hundreds of people in there simultaneously, don't worry about this. But if you do have hundreds of people in there simultaneously, it is possible on very rare occasions for there to be one hire. So if you had, say, a 16-player world like Murder Manor, and you only had 16 heads-up displays, it is possible that a 17th player will appear and they will not have a heads-up display. So in Murder Manor, we have 1 extra for everything that individual players need. And so just keep that in mind. If you do experience your world getting really popular, feel free to just duplicate. And that's what this script is all about. So in the past, what you had to do is go to the properties panel for every single heads-up display and change this number to be 0, then 1, then 2, and then so on. I eventually realized, let's just create a manager. So we create an object variable, and this is going to be our PLID assigner, and click create. And we're gonna tell the PLID assigner who we are, and it's gonna tell us who we are for. And it'll probably make sense as you see it like written out. So we're gonna say when world is started, send an event to an object. The object we're sending it to is the PLID assigner. The event is called register me. Okay, so we're gonna register me to the PLID assigner. What is me? Me is the heads-up display, which is the self pill found on the values tab. We'll drag that over into the parameter slot. This sends the self parameter or the self object variable as a parameter, which is then able to be received over here. And so we can now say when event is received, and that event is the register me event, which comes with that parameter. So click the plus symbol, select object from the dropdown, and call this a heads up display since that's what we are getting. So click create. And so now that we've received the heads up display, and so what every single one of these is going to do, so basically build one, right? Build one heads up display, make sure it's perfect. And then once you're done testing with 1 or 2, depending on how many people you've got in build mode with you, you can then duplicate that one for as many as that you need. And this is going to reference, it's going to have a reference from the properties panel to the PLID assigner. So you're going to have to drag the pill from the properties panel of this one to the properties panel of this one. And so whatever object is holding and running this script. All right, now when register me is received with this heads up display, we now need to do something with this. So we're going to go and create a list of all the heads up displays. So we're going to click object, select list, and we'll call this HUDs for HUDs, click create. And then what we want to do is add the HUD to the list if it is not currently in the list. So we're going to start by grabbing an if statement. Then at the top of operators, we have not, because we're going to say if it's not in the list. We're then scrolling down to list contains item. List contains item. So if the HUDs list does not contain the HUD, we then want to add the HUD to the list. So we'll scroll back down to list and grab add to list, and then add that HUD to the HUDs list. Remember, you can duplicate by thumbsticking to the right. Okay, we now have a list of all of the HUDs. And now what we need to do is tell the HUD who they are for. And because there will be the number of HUDs as there is the number of players, the index of this heads up display in the list is going to represent who they are for. So the first item that gets added to the list will be at index 0. So they're going to be for the first player to enter the world, because you'll remember the first player arrives is at index 0 and has the ID 0. And then the next person will be 1, and so on and so forth. And so we need to tell the heads up display who they are for. So we're going to go back to our events tab and send an event back to the heads up display. And we're going to put this outside of the if, so that if, for instance, you just needed to get that number one more time, you could send the register me event with HUD, and then that will receive back its index. This also accounts for potentially like really rare bugs. And so we'll say The name of this event will be UR4 and press create. So we're going to send the UR4 event to the heads up display. We now need to tell it its index. So back on operators under list, we're going to see an option for index of item in list. We can then get the index of the heads up display in the HUD's list, and that will send a number parameter representing its index back to the HUD. Excuse me. Now to receive this back on the HUD, we need to also have an event for receiving it. So we'll go ahead and say when event is received, that's the UR4 event, and we're going to receive that with a number parameter, which is the UR4 number, and click create. And then we can then set the IM4 variable to the parameter UR4, which allows us to save that for use later. All right, so all that we've done here is basically remove the need to manually enter 0 through the max number of players allowed in your world. And this is just a fantastic time saver. And I do this all the time for a lot of different other scripts that need this one for every single player. So I encourage you to utilize this specific piece. Okay, next, it is time to think about when the player arrives and when the player leaves. And so we know that this is running on a HUD, and a HUD, if you haven't built one of these before, we'll just go ahead and describe this with a comment at the top, runs on a grouped attachable object that is non-collidable, parentheses, so it cannot be grabbed. Okay, and it runs on a grouped attachable object that is non-collidable, so it cannot be grabbed. The reason it is a grouped attachable object is because you cannot make an attachable object attachable unless it is grouped. Runs on an attachable object, and we'll say parentheses must be a group of 2+ objects to be made attachable. There we go. And then we'll put comma, that is non-collidable, so it cannot be grabbed, comma, and is attached with anchor to player head, to a player's head. Okay. That is a pretty long comment, but it does do a very good job describing exactly what this is going to be. And so yeah, that's how this is going to work. You're going to basically group a text object with maybe another text object, and then you're going to make it attachable to a player's head. And once we get this next couple lines of code running, you can then test this to see if it's lining up where you want it to, and then you can change the anchor points from the properties panel to be exactly where you want this to anchor to the player. I recommend having a second person in build mode to test this out. Okay.
I got a question.
Yeah, go for it.
So basically the HUD is the health bar following you, and then the HUD player assigner is their health and who they are.
No, it's actually really just to give them a reference number. It only has one use at this point. So you know when you were going through the thing and you had to manually type in like 0, then 1 for every single player's index? You don't have to do that anymore with this code.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, exactly. It's a pretty big win. So we're going to head back to the events tab, and we're going to scroll down to when player enters world and when player exits world. And what we want to do here is say, if the player entering the world is my player, the player I am for, then we're going to attach ourself to their head. And when they exit the world, if they are my player, then we're going to remove it from that player. So in addition to knowing the IM4, I'm also going to create a player variable called my player. So this will represent who the player is. And then we're going to go and create an if statement inside the when world is entered by player. And we're going to check the index of this player. So if we go and grab a equals symbol, we're then going to say if IM4, and then we'll go and grab the index of player. So under player, operators player, we have get player index. And this will then allow us to say, what is the index of this player? And if that is the player IM4, we're then going to set my player to be that player who's just entered the world. So set my player to player. And then we also want to attach self to that player. We're then going to go to actions, go to, let's see, attach attachable object to player. We know that this is running on the attachable object, so we'll go to the values tab and grab self. So we're going to attach self to my player, to their head. We'll make sure that the head is the one that we've selected. And now when they exit the world, we want to detach it from them. And so we'll say if this player is my player, then we want to detach self from the player. And so we'll go and grab detach object, and we're going to detach self. And now that we've detached self from the player, we ideally want to return back to where we started. So we're going to go quickly add a couple basic values here. And so in Horizon Royale I built last year, we had guns for every player. And when the player left the world, it went back on a wall. So it kind of looked really cool where it was located. And so you can do the same thing here, right? We'll save the origin vector position, so the origin position. And so when players are not in the world, you might have a display room where all the non-used heads-up displays are on, or if you have other gear. Anyway, it's not required, but it's a cool idea. So we got the origin position and we've got the origin rotation. And if you didn't want to do a display room, you could just hide these under the world, so that way they're out of sight when the player does leave the world. They're not just sitting around the world. Now, to make this work correctly, I do believe we need to add a brief delay of about 1/10 of a second. So we're going to send an event called return. Let's scroll down here a little bit, maybe not. Okay, we'll just call that return, hit enter. Is it going to work? Why is that not working? Scroll. It won't let me hit the enter button. I guess I kind of cheated a little bit. That's okay. In Horizon, you can scroll. Okay, so when return is received, we are going to make sure return is sent to self. So we'll say send return to self with a delay. We'll go to values tab to get a number input. And then that delay, we're going to make 0.1 seconds. This is just to make sure that the detaching has taken place. And then when return is received, we want to move to and rotate to our origin rotation and positions. We'll drag down move to, and we'll drag down rotate to. And we're just going to go grab that origin position and that origin rotation. And this is applying to self. And then the next thing we want to do is also save the origin position, origin rotation on world start. So we're going to go set those values up here on world started. And so we're going to go grab origin position, origin rotation, and then back on the values tab under object, we have position of object and we have rotation of object. And this is of self, of course. So then we'll bring the self pill into there. Okay, so now we've got origin position, origin rotation saved. We've got it returning when the player exits the world. This is about half of the heads-up display, really. So pretty solid stuff here. Now, I do like to break my script into separate sections, and since this is kind of like the main heads-up display attach and detach section, I'm going to describe that with a comment and say main, we'll just call this attach, comma, detach. I'm spelling that wrong. Where is the spelling for detach? D-E-T-A-C-H. No, I spelled it right. Oh no, I added an extra T. There we go. All right, attach, detach, and return below script or code below. There we go. Colon. Okay, so then above this, I'm going to work on writing the next bit of code that we need, which is related to the health bar. And so we're going to imagine that this object, this heads-up display, has a health bar above the player, and it has a health bar in front of the player, one that they can read on their heads-up display, and one that's above them. And so over here, we're going to need references to those text objects. So the heads-up display is a grouped object, and inside of it, there are 2 text objects. You can always add more in the future, and so you could add like a score or other text objects in there. But for now, we're just going to start with 2. And so this first one is going to be the, let's call it the overhead. Is there a better word for this? We'll call it, yeah, overhead text or health bar. Yeah, overhead health bar. Seems good. Okay. Overhead health bar text. There we go. Create. Long name, but very descriptive. And then the next one is also going to be very similar, except for this is the one that's in front of the player. And so this will be called my player's health bar text. All right. And so the important thing here is that my player's health bar text is the only, can only be seen by that player, whereas this one can be seen by everyone. So we do want to make sure to adjust the per player visibility of this text object. I think I was reading the Vidyuu Discord, someone was saying that it might be broken right now. So if it isn't working when you try the script, it might be fixed in a week. And if you're watching this in the future, hopefully it's been fixed. So back on actions, we have a set who can view, who is allowed to view object. And we have a reset who is allowed to view object. So we know when the world is exited by the player, we want to, in addition to detaching, reset who is allowed to view the my player health bar text object. And when the world is entered by the player, we want to set who is allowed to view to be just that player. And for this to work, we need to provide a list, I believe. Let's see, am I right or am I wrong? I could be wrong. Let's see, set who is allowed to view object while we're attaching. And yeah, it says a list here, so it doesn't need to be a list of players. And so we're going to create a player list, and this player list is just going to be called maybe who can see health bar. So if for some reason you ever wanted this to be more than just the single player, there shouldn't be any reason, but anywho, we're going to go ahead and start by going down to the list section, and we're going to clear the list. So in case somebody else had been in the world as this player's ID, we're going to first clear the list of who can see the health bar, and then we're going to add that player to the list, or add my player to the who can see health bar list. And then we're going to set who is allowed to see the my player health bar text to be who can see health bar. And now we have adjusted it so only that player who's in the world can see their health bar text. And then another cool trick that you might consider adding, but we're not going to do today, is under actions, you've got set object visibility. So you could make it so that when they enter the world, they actually can't see the text object. So you could set object visibility for text to false. And if you did that, then when they enter the game, you could set it to true. So that's another option. And one reason you might want to do that is because having text in front of a user at all times can cause a little bit of motion sickness with those who are not comfortable in VR or have not yet built their VR legs all the way up. And even with some of those that have, I've seen just kind of having stuff in your peripheral vision is not exactly comfortable. And so just having it there less of the time could be very beneficial. Okay, so with that out of the way, that discussion, we're now going to go ahead and start working on the next bit of this, which is to make it display health. And so I'm going to create a comment here that's going to say update and display health bar. And so we're going to imagine there's two ways you could do this. And so we're going to create a number value, which is going to be called health. And you could just display the number on the text object. So you could just say, I don't know what their health is, but we'll figure that out in a second. But we just say, oh, their health, that is going to be just displayed, right? So above their head, it would say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or whatever their health is. It's not as cool as a health bar, but it is pretty simple. So let's start with that, and then I'll change it into a health bar. And so let's go to update display and health bar. It's gonna need a few different events here. So the first thing we need to know is when the health bar has been updated. So we're gonna call this health update. And this isn't going to engage with any sort of like adjusting the player's health. It's simply just going to receive the new health value. And so when new health is received, we're going to set the local health value to the new health value. So presumably you've got some sort of game manager where people are losing health when they get hit by a gun. And when that happens, you want to also send an event out that gets out to here. And so the way that we're going to receive this over here is going to require some special stuff to be added. And so for this new health to work, I do realize that we need to add another parameter, which is going to be the player who has had their health updated. And so we're going to say the player and press create. So this health update will be received for all players. Whenever any player has their health updated, all heads-up displays are going to receive this, which means we need to say if the player is my player. So we'll say if the player is my player. And in that case, we will set the health to the new health. And then to receive this event, we're going to do a really kind of advanced tactic, but very cool stuff here. When the player enters the world, we can do listen to events. Ooh, there's a few different ways we could do this. But yeah, we're going to do this way. It's a wireless way of communication, pretty advanced, but super awesome. And so in addition to all the things we've been doing in When the World is Entered by Player, we are going to listen to events from all players. We could listen to events from all players. That's totally acceptable. And so what this does is it means you can send an event to a player, and then it will be received by anything listening to events from player. We could also listen to events only for my player, and that kind of makes more sense. Obviously, like it just makes more sense to only listen to events from player. So we're gonna just listen to events from my player. And we're also going to, when they exit the world, stop listening to events from my player. And that takes care of that. So that means for this health event to be received, we don't actually need to know who the player is because we know that we're only receiving this because we're listening to my player. And then we can just set health to new health. And then on some manager, we're going to need to send this event out. So let's go quickly imagine some sort of health manager. And so I imagine if you've done the local scripting from our last tutorial, that it's a local scripted gun, which means it needs to send an event to a health manager whenever somebody loses health. So there's probably something like health update event, which is going to be received with a player. And so we'll call this the player. And then we also need to know how much damage they're taking. So we'd say something like number damage. And then we can then say, I would recommend doing this locally and not using a player persistent variable. You could use player persistent variables to adjust the player's health, but it does potentially lead to server latency issues and can slow your game down. And I suspect, I don't know if this is true or not, but I suspect if you have somebody with really bad ping in your world, it slows everybody else down. At least that's something it seemed like we were experiencing last year when we were making Horizon Royale. So what I'm suggesting doing is creating a list of players, and then these would be called all players. And then you'd need to know about all players' health. So you'd have a list of numbers, which would be called all players' health. And then the player index would represent the player health. And to make that work, you would have something like, let's see, where when player enters world and when player exits world, we're going to add and remove these values. And we're going to make this real fast just to demonstrate it. So we have add to list, add to list. And so we're going to add a player to the player list. We need to know the max health. So we'll create a number called max health, press create. And then we'll say maybe the max health is 10. And then we would set or add max health to the list of all players' health. And by doing this, we've created a parallel list, which means that for every player, there's a health, and those two will remain in sync, which will allow us to use them up here. We also need to remove them when they exit the world. And so when they exit the world, we want to go to our list options and say, remove item at index from list and remove item from list. And so we need to know the index of the player in the all players list so that we can remove that from the all players health list. And then we want to remove the player from the all players list. Now there is a really rare occurrence that happened a couple years ago, but it could happen again. So what I recommend doing here is adding another if statement in this when world is entered by player, which says if the player is not currently in the list. A couple years ago, there was a weird bug in Horizon. It only lasted like a week, but it sent the when world is entered by player event twice, which broke a lot of people's worlds until it was fixed. But if you add this, it will prevent that bug from affecting you if it ever does return. And so we say if the list does not contain the player, then add the player to the list and add max health to the list. And so that just accounts for that potential bug. Okay. So now we have a way to add their health. Now we're going to receive this health update event, and we're going to need to get their current health value. And so we're going to create a number value, which will be called current health. And we're going to set current health. And so we start by saying set current health, and then we want to get the player's current health and subtract from it And then at the very end, we want to call maximum, which I'll show you how that works in a second. We're going to drag it in there just for now. We're going to put the minus symbol in the A slot, and then we want to get the item at this index from the list. So we'll go down to list and say, actually, we want to create another number variable called current index. Current index, press create, and then we're going to set current index to be this thing that we had down here, index of player and all players. So now we know the index of the player, and then we can utilize that to get item from list. And so there's get item at index from list. Okay. And so we're going to start by getting the current health of the player. So we know that their index in all players' health is that. And then we're going to subtract that with damage, but damage should never go below 0. Like when they hit 0, they're out of health. And if for some reason it's like going below 0, this max operator we put in first, make sure that it always chooses the maximum value. So 0, if it's lower than 0, we want it to choose 0. And that is how we set the current health. We then want to probably run some sort of if statement in here. I don't know what your health manager looks like, but your health manager would want to know if current health equals 0, then they're dead, right? Like, okay, well, you're dead now. You'd probably want to have a respawn point or something. So just as a quick example, we'll put in a respawn point, and then you would respawn the player to that respawn point, which would basically, yeah, exit them from the game or whatever you want to do. Okay. So if current health equals 0, respawn player to respawn point. But now that we've got that, we also would want to set their current health. And so inside of here, we would probably, oops, Command Z, grab another set 2 and set current health back to max health, because when they die, you'd probably want to rebuild their health. And then at the very end here, we want to update their health value in the list. So we're going to go and click set item at index. So this is going to adjust the item at the index. So we're going to set the index is the current index. The list is the all players health list, and the health is the current health. So if it's not equal to 0, it'll be whatever this new value is. So we set current health at the index to the, so it's set to the new health. And then we also need to send an event to the player, which is where we're going to receive it up here on our other object. So we're going to send event to object, and it does say object, but a player can also work in this case. And so we're sending an event called health update to the player with their current health, and that will allow us to receive that up here, over here on our heads up display. Okay. Like I said, it's pretty advanced tactic, this sending events to player, but it's also super powerful. This is a pretty rough health manager, just a little thing to get you started if you haven't already implemented one. And then over here on heads up display, we can now utilize that. So the way this health manager works, right, is like when a bullet hits a player, it then has a reference to the health manager, and it sends an event to the health manager with the player who was hit and how much damage it does. So you might have weapons that do 1 damage, some that do 2, maybe it's only 0.5 damage, etc. And so you send that value as a parameter after the player parameter to the health manager to update their health. And then whatever the logic is for respawning the player. So like a lot of games you get to play over and over again, like you get 3 lives or something like that. And so maybe it respawns the player, not to a world spawn point, but like back into the game. So maybe there's a like base where you start the game. That obviously can lead to spawn camping, but that is a whole nother topic, so we're not getting into that. Whew. Okay, so back here we've received health. We've set health to new health. And now that we have their health, we need to display that. And we were just gonna start with a really basic display. So we're gonna create a new event called display update. And this display update is gonna go to actions tab and grab display text. We're gonna grab 2 of those, and we're gonna display the health as a variable as string. This is just a quick and dirty way to make this work using just the number, as I mentioned earlier. So we're grabbing that health and dragging that in, and then this is displaying on the overhead health bar text and also on the player's text. So now there's just a simple number displaying in both locations, and you've just finished your first heads up display health bar. but we do want this to look like a health bar. And so ideally, the health bar is going to look something like this, right? Let's create a design here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Doesn't look too bad. So we're imagining 20 straight bars. And then we're going to imagine probably a percentage at the end would be nice. So something like space, space, and then 100% might look nice. And then this goes down and down and down. And so what we need to know as a variable over here is we need to know the max health. And so if you change this on the health manager, you'll also need to change it here. And so we'll go ahead and say max health and press create. And max health is going to be, we said 10. And then that's going to allow us to calculate the percentage. We know their new health value. And we also want to, well, we're going to want to call display update when they join in. So when world is entered by player, we know that their health starts at 10. And we've started by listening to events. We're going to do two things over here. We're going to set health to max health. And then we're going to call the display event. Okay, that's not going where I want it to go. Command Z, drag that right there. There we go. All right, so set health to max health, and then send event display to self, send event display update to self, and that's going to cause the text objects to update. Okay, and I think we should note that there's one, so it's display health bar. So the player's health bar, their heads up display will be the one that displays the percentage, and then the one that goes above their head should just be this these slashes. And so we'll put a comment here at the end that says space, 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 arrow, percentage only shown on player's health bar, HUD. Okay, cool stuff. So with that, the next thing we need to look at is making that bar. So we need to make the bar first, then we need to add it together with the percentage. So let's start by calculating a percent. So we're gonna create a number variable called current percent, press create, and we're going to set current percent. And we want this to be a whole value ranging between 0 and 100. So the first thing we're going to do to make this a whole value is grab the floor. Floor returns a number without any decimal places, so an integer. And so we're going to calculate the floor of the division. And we know max health goes on the bottom because it can't get any larger. And we also need to multiply this by 100, so we'll do that in a second. And then we're going to take health and divide it by max health. So this will return a number between 0 and 1. And then what we want to do is multiply that. So I'm going to duplicate this line so that I can add a multiplication symbol right here. And then we're going to multiply that by 100. So that way it is a percentage like we'd like it to be. And multiply by 100. There we go. And now that we've calculated the current percent, we know that the final thing we need to do is display a series of bars. So we're going to create a string variable. We're going to call this the display bar, health bar. Maybe we'll just call it the health bar. Yeah, sure. Okay, so for now, just to make sure, just to get this progressing a little bit further, we'll come back to this in just a second. We're going to set health bar to be that 20 upward slashes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And then what we're going to do is set health bar on the overhead player to just be simply this health bar. It doesn't need the as string. And then this one down here is going to need to be a concatenation, which just means to add two things together. We're going to grab the plus symbol, and we're going to take the health bar and add to it with the current percent as a string, plus, we'll add another plus symbol in here, plus the percentage string input at the very end. So we'll add a percent symbol, and then I just realized we're also going to want one more of these. So we're going to put health bar. So a couple plus symbols. So we got health bar plus, and then we need a couple spaces is the way we designed it up here. So we said space, space, and then plus variable as string is going to allow us to take the number of current percent and convert it to a string. It's worth noting that when you use add, it needs to know that it's a string, right? Because otherwise it's trying to do math, like numerical math. So that's why we convert it to a string. And then it adds that percent symbol at the end, and that should look pretty solid. Okay, now what we need to do is calculate this health bar, which is actually surprisingly simple. Yeah, I mean, it is surprisingly simple. So if we know that our maximum number of slashes is this, we're going to create a new variable. Yeah, I can do the math. There's a lot of math here. So if you don't do good with math, just let it be magic. And maybe one day it'll all click, but if not, it's not a big deal. So we're going to call this max health bar slashes and press create. And so this is going to represent the maximum number of slashes. So all you have to do is add more slashes to this. Oopsie, I'm not sure what happened there. So we're going to do 20 as we did before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We now have 20 of these slashes as we did here. We can then delete this. And what we want to do is set this health bar to be the right amount of slashes. And I am kind of curious because we're not adding spaces to this spaces section here. So the health bar is going to shrink to the left. So if we're looking at this example here, when the health shrinks, the percentage moves with it that way, right? Until it's down to 0%. And I think that's okay. Command Z does not work. Command Z, no, it's not happy with me. Oops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Close enough. Okay, so we got that back. And now to calculate this health bar, we need to go into our string operations. So under operators, we have text, and we can get a substring of string, which means to get a piece of a string. And so what we want to do is get a substring of this health bar, the max health bar. We just called it. Oh, I put that in the wrong spot. Command X, Command V. There we go. So we got max health bar slashes. And so we're going to get a substring of the max health bar slashes. And that is going to start an index 0. So we'll go ahead and put in index 0. And then the length is going to be the length of this using this percentage. So I think what I want to do is duplicate this set current percent, move this part down here, delete the divide symbol here, multiply current percent by 100 afterwards, and then before, sorry, a lot of duplication here, but when I'm done, it should make a little more sense. We're going to keep the health divided by max health here, so it's between 0 and 1. So right here, its current percent is between 0 and 1, health divided by max health. Then over here, we're going to take that current percent and multiply it by 100 to get it back to where we want it to be. And then in the meantime, right here, we can utilize this number between 0 and 1. And we're going to grab another floor value. In fact, I think we can just duplicate this line into the length value. And then instead of multiplying by 100, what we're doing here is we got a value between 0 and 1. So imagine it is at 1 to start. 1 multiplied by the length of max health bar slashes will return the correct length that we want the string to be. And so we're going to say text length of string. And so we get the length of max health bar slashes. And then we use the floor to make sure it's a whole number because the decimal isn't an accurate length. And yeah, so there we go. We've now created a health bar that will slowly shrink as their health goes down. And if you wanted to test this, because you probably don't have a gun that's sending health update when you want to go and test this, and it is very important to test early and often. To test this, what we can do is start a loop when the player enters the world. So this would be a debug mode. So we're going to create a new Boolean called debug mode. That's going to be a Boolean, click create. And for the purpose of this, we'll set it to true. So if debug mode is true, when this display update goes off, it's going to say if, and we're going to do, come on, there it is. if debug mode is true, we want to run some special code to adjust the health. And so we're going to then say send event to object self. Let's see, come on. Send event to parameter value input self. And the event we're going to send is this health update, because we know health update is going to send display update. I forgot to actually do that. Let's quickly add that in real quick. So when health update is received, we actually want to send event display update immediately afterwards. That's going to update the display. And so we send display update to self. And then we're going to create a bit of a loop here, but we want it to happen with a delay. So let's actually go switch to send event with delay. Oh, sorry. Send event with delay. There we go. And we'll delete this. And then we're going to send the event to self. The event is health update. It's going to be sent after 1 second or maybe 2 seconds, just to give you some time to experience it. And what we're going to do is subtract health. And then what we want to also do is consider that at some point your health might equal 0 and you don't want this to go negative, because that will probably break something. So we'll add one more if statement here that says if health is -1. Okay, that makes sense. So we'll set health right here. Set health to be health -1. And there is health -1. And then if health is less than 0, that's what we can't allow. If health is less than 0, then we want to set health to max health. So we'll duplicate this line as the if, and then instead of calculating it, we'll just drag max health over and then send health update to self with the current health value. And that will call this in a loop indefinitely. So it's just going to constantly cycle your health up and down while it's in debug mode. And there you go. So that's a way to test this code out. Whew. All right. Any questions from our Discord audience before we wrap it up?
So, yeah. Do I have to make or have a physical health bar? So if you were to see those screenshots I sent you, I actually have a health bar that I made with like 5 different pucks in a cylinder, right? This is a display health bar, right?
Yeah, it's using a text object.
Dude, that's so much easier. That's so much nicer, actually.
Yeah, I don't recommend using a bunch of animated objects because it'll use up your capacity meter pretty fast. So anytime you get away. So animated object takes up about 1/8% capacity. So if you had, say, 5 of those, that's almost a whole percentage of simulation, which is a lot if you multiply it by all your players in your world. Whereas text is 1/8 or 1/16. It's 1/16, I believe. So for 2 of these, you'd be using up 1/8 per player. And that means if you had 16 players, you're only using up 2% for all of your players, which is pretty affordable.
Oh yeah, that's pretty good.
I like that.
And then, because I'm trying to get it, because earlier you said something about 16 players like Murder Manor. I want to try to get up to like maybe 12.
Yeah, 12 is good. And so getting rid of those extra animated objects is definitely going to help.
So the HUD is the display. The HUD player assigner tells the thing where the HUD goes,
which
and
player
then
to
the
go
health
to.
manager
Yep.
is the health. That's where you set their health.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, sweet! I'm learning. Awesome. Oh, sweet. And then just quick question: if per se, if they were to take damage, right? How? I'll figure that out because I don't want you to add more. So actually, how would I? No, I don't want you to add more. I just feel bad.
No, you're good.
So basically,
we'll go. I actually saved it from last time. Let's see if I can quickly do this. Save as. I should have. Save.
Because I have a weapon, or like I have this floor where if you walk into like this spiky floor, you take a damage point, right? Or if you get shot by a gun, you take a damage. How would you actually do that? I just feel bad.
You're good. No problem.
Just know you're the best person ever. Like,
No problem, man. Happy to help. All right, we're going to import, let's see, open, that's what we want, open from the auto gun tutorial. Here's the file. All right, so this is the last weapon we made. So you remember making this, and you remember we had when projectile hits player. So if you haven't seen this tutorial, just came out. It's on the channel. It's the one right before this. When projectile hits player, we were just simply sending a hit effects. Now, because this is a local script, it's hard to do a ton of stuff with it. But what we need to do is go over to the add new, create a object variable, which will be the health manager. So we need to reference the health manager on all of our weapons. Yes, we'll allow it to save changes. Okay, and so now that we got a health manager, we can then send an event when the projectile hits a player to the health manager. And there we go, send to health manager. And I believe the parameters were player followed by damage. So we're gonna go create a new number parameter or variable called damage, create, and we'll set the default damage to just 1. And then we can pass that as a parameter to this event we're sending. And I don't remember the name of the event. I know I just created it, but I think it was health update or something like that. So we just need to make sure those are the same. But yeah, there you go. So you'd send health update to the health manager with player and damage. Make sure that that is what is actually being received on the other side. And there we go. We'd be good. Not too difficult.
Awesome. Oh, sweet. And then basically just do that for the floor too. For the trigger. So when you walk into a certain trigger, it does that.
Ah, yeah. Yep. So pretty easy to do that. Anytime you need to update health, you can use this. And then you can add some extra logic to the health manager. So I think yep.
You said you made a battle royale?
Yeah, it's called Horizon Royale. Worth checking out. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm most definitely checking that out.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I spent about 4 months of my life working on it, so
yeah,
it's a lot of work. I still love it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, no, absolutely my pleasure. Really enjoy this. It was called Health Update. Good. Yeah, so there we go. And just skimming through the script here for anyone, you can pause at this moment to look through if you're watching the video. I'll also post screenshots in Discord, so definitely go check. The Discord link is in the description. If you have any other questions, it's hard to read the YouTube comments every day, but feel free to comment on YouTube or join us in Discord. You can tag me at Lakes05. And thanks guys so much for watching. We'll see you in Horizon. Bye.